Yeah. Okay.
Well, let's go into our next subject, so we don't have to stick with the screen for too long. Yeah, so the second topic of the yoga philosophy, we got the classification or the types of yoga. And this is another really nice subject to really understand that. And I guess to understand this subject and why there's so many paths, the multi-layered paths of yoga are important. Sort of, if we begin to think of our day-to-day life to really have that sense of being, sense of health and happiness, then you see we need so many activities or parts of the life. There is a time to sleep, there is a time to act, there is a time to sing, time to meet with friends, time to talk, time not to talk, time to just go inward, time to learn to breathe deep. So if you start thinking, how all different practices become so important at each and every aspect of our life, then you can see how also yoga actually expanded or explored many aspects and many paths and practices to give us those different tools. So in a literal way, you can see yoga as a multi-layered path that has the multi-layered or multi-dimensional practices, and each and every practice is actually overlapping on each other. So I guess if we begin with the highest form, that is actually all inclusive, that aspect of yoga or that part of yoga is known as Raj Yoga. So the Raj translates as the royal or the highest or the divine. As I guess the aim, the goal of Raj Yoga is all about our self-realization, evolution, how the self, the individual can attain the union with the higher or the divine or the cosmic self. Now, the most beautiful thing in Raj Yoga, it is all inclusive. So it really have every aspect of yoga. It includes the asana, the posture work. It includes pranayama. It includes meditation. It includes the sensory withdrawal. It includes meditation. Also, it includes the singing, chanting, mantra, and then it also includes all aspects of the yoga philosophy that gives us the tool on how to deal with our day-to-day life. So it's sort of like Raj Yoga, sort of think it's a big umbrella that is all inclusive. Then we go into a little bit of our other aspects where people choose that this really works for me, and I'm just going to follow the one aspect of yoga. Let's say for some of us, the physical practice works, for some other people, pranayama works, for some meditation works, some chanting, singing works. So we go through different ones. The Hatha Yoga.
So we're working from page 46 now, just going through each type of yoga. Yeah, so then there's Hatha Yoga. So I think last time we talked a little bit about Hatha Yoga. Hatha meaning balancing the two energies within us, or forces. So as it says there, the Hatha Yoga includes asana, so that's our posture work. Kriyas, so kriya has a few different meanings, but basically it means some kind of action. When we talk about kriya, we usually mean a movement that is with the breath or in tune with the breath. So for example, you breathe in, you stretch, you breathe out, you release the stretch. That's mostly when we talk about a kriya from this tradition, that's what we mean. But there are other places that we use the word kriya in a different context. Mudras, so mudra can be things like hand mudras. So for example, namaskar mudra, where we bring the palms together. So this is like sealing energy. But there's also mudras that are body postures that actually we use with the bandhas that we talked about earlier. We'll use bandhas while holding a posture, and they are also called mudras. And then pranayamas, so that's like we've just done the Savitri rhythm, and last month we did Sukha rhythm. There's many pranayamas, especially in our tradition. We've got over 120 pranayamas, different breathing techniques. But it's more about working with the energy through the use of the breath rather than breath work, really. And also in Hatha Yoga we have all the cleansing practices that we have in the ancient yoga tradition. So there's all different things you might have seen. I don't know if you've ever seen any films or documentaries about sort of Indian sadhus where they'll like chew a long bit of cloth and then it'll come out the other end, or they do lots of that you can do like a cleansing of the nose and mouth with like a catheter type rubber or cotton, which Nyandev can demonstrate for you if you like. But I don't like doing that one. Or there's also like a salt water one we use to cleanse the nose. That's nice. That's a nice one. It's not doesn't feel too drastic. And there's other methods we use to cleanse the inside of the body, because the cleansing in yoga is not just like wash your body, it's like also you have to go inside the body. And there's about 6 main yogic cleansing techniques to work on the inside of your body, especially the digestive system. There's quite a lot. But I won't go into depth about them, but all of these practices come under the umbrella of Hatha Yoga. Did I cover all of those, more or less? Yeah. So mantra, then the next one. I'll just talk about that and then you can... Yeah, I mean, mantra, you probably heard that lots of times before. Mantra can be translated as like a mind protector, is one translation. It's basically repeating some kind of, usually a Sanskrit chant or word. It's kind of interesting because nowadays it's said that our minds are so much more distracted than they were hundreds of years ago, and they say that, you know, in ancient time yogis could chant a mantra and it would be so powerful because of the quality of their mind and also the environment we live in, that they could manifest solid objects just from chanting a sound, which just sounds completely bonkers now, but it says that mantra is a lot less effective than it was because the quality of the human mind has become so much more dispersed and distracted and polluted with kind of modern day life, really. Which is just an interesting thought, but this is something that our teachers talked about. But nevertheless, it is definitely a practice that does have some effect, that you can just find some, even a positive affirmation is something that works well. And I personally had a really good experience with that after reading, like a long time ago now, but you might have heard of Louise Hay. She's really big into affirmation, and I remember reading her book in my 20s and doing that. I think what was her, it was something like, I approve of myself, I think, her affirmation, to be used like a mantra, just saying it constantly in your head. And actually I definitely experienced a very big shift just from practicing that. And that wasn't a Sanskrit mantra, that was just like repeating something positive about yourself. But when we talk about a mantra using a Sanskrit sound, then it's this kind of ancient high vibration that we believe Sanskrit is. And we're kind of inculcating like an energy with the sound as well. And usually we'll repeat the name of like a divine being or a quality, a divine quality. Or often mantras are given to students. It's like a guru passes a mantra to a disciple, if you like. This is like the ancient style, and they'll use that as their own practice. And there's also lots of stories in Indian history about students being given divine mantras that give them kind of powers or certain protective abilities, or all different, there's all sorts of stories if you go back in Indian history about mantra. So that's more or less. If you want to add anything else about mantra.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was great. Yeah, so the mantra is really sort of think of the mana is the mind and the tra is the tool. So we're using mind as a tool, and the tool for the mind is just using a syllable, using a phrase or a chant or some Sanskrit words. And the mantra can also be actually any language. And by repeating that again and again, you can repeat it, I guess, verbally. You can repeat it in your mind, or you can repeat it also just to feel the experience, feel the word or the energy itself. And I find it quite interesting, interesting to listen to Deepika's experience. But it's so true that the mind has the power, and the way we say, speak things, or way we put our energy out, that creates its vibration, its essence. If you see someone and you give them a nice appreciative smile or a hug, it does create the energy, isn't it? So the mantra in there is like what energy you expressing from your heart. You're saying, oh, I love you, I bless you, or so nice to see you, happy to see you. Even maybe you're not saying it verbally, but that accent. So then the mantra is that the tool of words, or the heart, that energy we express through. Okay, then we move into the fourth type. The fourth path of yoga is Laya Yoga. This is actually a pretty advanced or pretty amazing aspect of yoga. So Laya, it means you complete absorption, and that absorption can be in a phrase, in a word, in a mantra. That absorbs can be breath. In most sort of, like, the simplest and most typical practice they talk about is Laya is a complete practice of being. The another word I find quite amazing from the Laya Yoga is being into that moment of Sakshi Bhava. So you start to become that complete witnessing awareness from within. So either you go on for a walk, so you actually become the walk, or you start to witness that my body, my breath, my mind is going through the walk, and everything we see, we feel, we experience, we smell, we start to witness that. So it's actually going beyond our individual ego or that I, and become the experience itself. And mostly they use the breath as a tool. So you breathing in, you breathing out, and with that in and out breath, you can chant a mantra, you can have the awareness. So it's just really using some of these tools to completely be absorbed in that moment. And once you get into the absorption, then that brings a natural transcendence. And I guess earlier you all had that experience, hopefully, like, just using that Savitri rhythm pranayama, breathing in, holding your breath out, breathing out, holding your breath out. So that gradually, when it becomes the effortless practice, when you don't have to do it, you just become that breath, you become the retention, the absorption, that stillness. It sort of transforms into Laya Yoga. So almost you can say the Laya Yoga can be seen as really the outcome, the fruit of practicing your concentration, or your ability to focus your mind in one thing at once. And in that aspect, your breath, your sound, your mantra, your senses actually become tool. So I quite like the Laya Yoga. Another beauty of Laya Yoga is in here you start to use your senses and your ability to focus. You're not fighting, I guess, against them. You start to witness what you're experiencing. Okay, we move to number 5, which is Tantra Yoga.
Mm-hmm. So Tantra, again, is one of those phrases that we hear a lot of these days, and it's kind of often thought of as something to do with sex, which is not, by the way. But well, certainly not in our tradition anyway. But Tantra basically means the joining or union of energy, but in our understanding of it, it's not with another person, it's the energies in our own self, that we're trying to direct inwards. And for the path of enlightenment, we need to conserve and direct our energy inwards instead of outwards. And so it's kind of understanding all the practices really of yoga through a tantric or energetic understanding that we're dealing with all the different energies in our body, and we're just trying to always direct them back into ourselves to build the energy up. Yeah, I don't know, you want to add to that, because it's a bit difficult to explain, really.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, come on.
Place that you direct it, is there like a specific body place that you direct the energy into, like in your solar plexus or somewhere? Like where are you physically seeing it go when you direct it inwards?
Yeah, so in Tantra really deals, sort of think of Tantra as we dealing the science of our existence, and in that existence, your existence is not just the physical body, but we also have our mind body, we have our energy body, then we have our wisdom body, and finally we have the conscious or the soul body. And Tantra really mainly deals our link between our physical and the pranic body. So there where we talk about the chakras, and we talk about our nadis, we talk about energy fields. So I would not say it talks about just the one particular point. It actually talks about all different points. And really, if you think of your health and well-being, then well, tell me which part of your body or your chakra is more important than others. In a different situation, in a different time, each system, each energy field has its own important. Our complete health or holistic health is when all this whole system of your body and your energy, your mind comes together and function to support each other. So the Tantra really gives us all the tools, and I believe in many ways to understand that the true essence behind the Hatha Yoga practices, the postures and pranayama, the Tantra really explains all that. Like so many postures, we're following the animal spaces, we're creating geometrical shapes. Same with the pranayama, as earlier Deepika was telling, breathing in and then holding and creating that rectangle, creating the triangles, creating all those geometrical energy fields that naturally enforcing your energies to flow in different parts. So I would not say just a particular one part, because all different practices are to direct your energy in different parts of your body, different parts of your chakra and energy field. So the Tantra is that science, that part of yoga which uses, think of your physical body actually becomes a tool. So the body is a tool in Tantra to enhance and then go inward. Okay, we move to Karma Yoga, which is Deepika's favorite.
Why is it my favorite? So yeah, karma. So karma really is about selfless action. Well, there's a few different interpretations: selfless service or action without desire for the fruit. So karma is literally translated, kar is action and ma is mine, like my action. And we do a lot on our courses, we do karma yoga here as one of the practices, which is where we usually get the students to go out and do some gardening, but of course it's not their garden, it's the ashram garden, and just to kind of use the practice as that we're doing something, but we may not necessarily personally get the results of that action, but it's about kind of getting the mental state of doing something without feeling kind of, why am I doing this, or have I got to do this, or having sort of mental anguish, if you like, through different things that you have to do every day. And the idea is it's through the practice of karma yoga that we eventually can approach all the different aspects of our life in a much more mentally and emotionally calm way, I suppose. That we're not kind of feeling like, oh, this is just like one task after another, but we've got that kind of union of the body, mind, spirit, that we're just doing our actions that are necessary, without thinking, I'm doing this to get that, which we talked about earlier already, didn't we? But it's an interesting practice actually, and our guru Swami Gitananda said that if you really want to know and understand someone, give them a karma yoga task to do. And since we've been running the ashram, I didn't fully understand it, but now, we've had so many people that will give like a task, and people approach things in so many different ways, or do them in different ways, or behave, react, say, it's just interesting to see how differently people can be about doing something like the gardening or washing up or whatever, So it's an interesting kind of study, really, and it is about our own kind of behaviour, understanding how we emotionally work through all these daily tasks, if you like. It's just a daily sort of attitude of living, really, is how I understand it. What was Krishna's explanation in the Bhagavad Gita? So it's desireless action without thought of the fruits or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Niskam karma. So you're doing your actions, but without, I guess, again, worrying or putting too much into the fruit or the desires of it. And it is sort of, to me, I always see karma yoga aspect in our day-to-day life is sort of making our life effortless, so it just flows as it should be. So if you see, walking down, you see there is a mug need to be washed or need to go into the dishwasher, there is a floor needs to be swept, there is an email need to be answered, there is a work I must go out and do. So when you start to see like I am just the instrument of it, I'm not being punished or pushed or into the corner, or I have to do it because of the pressure or reasons, just taking all those conflicts out and then seeing that this is me, and what makes me who I am is all these karma, all these actions, all these duties that I need to fulfill. And then I guess in that karma yoga aspect, you can also see that each and every action we do, it has the material cause, it has the mental cause, but it also have a spiritual cause behind it, or the universal cause. So it's really focusing onto the universal cause or the bigger picture. If you, whatever work you do, you can see that I do the work to get money, or you can see I do the work to help somebody. So it's changing that perspective from material into the universal. And when your focus goes into the universal, I guess the benefit of that action will last with you for rest of your life. Or money does not last, does it? The material things don't last. They are all temporary. They all are impermanent. So it is changing the perspective behind everything we do into the divine, into the higher, or into the universal cause. That aspect of our yoga is the karma yoga. Then we move into Jnana Yoga. So the Jnana literally translates as the wisdom, as the knowledge, the wisdom behind the living, the science, or the lifestyle. I guess sort of think of Jnana Yoga practices as every time you are in a negative state, or when you're facing something that is disturbing your equanimity or your balance or your happiness, you are reminding yourself or replacing those negative thoughts with something positive, something constructive. So in a practice, the Jnana Yoga practices, whenever you have facing or you are in a situation, you remind yourself for something better, something higher. As earlier we were talking about this situation. So it's the situation can be seen as I have been locked down by the government or by the system, or you can see that I have been given the opportunity to focus, to give some time to myself, or maybe I have given the opportunity not to even spread it. So the Jnana Yoga is actually giving us the wisdom, the ideas on replacing the negative or the lower thoughts with the positive or the higher thoughts. And again, it goes into the detail from very material to the spiritual aspects of our life. We move to the Bhakti Yoga, unless you want to say anything.
Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga mostly when people hear the word Bhakti Yoga, they think about kind of like, it's a bit like songs of praise, but the kind of Indian Hindi version, singing to the divine, and we often do bhajan singing on our courses, where we're just singing different qualities of the divine. Obviously we use the Hindu ones, but Bhakti Yoga doesn't have to be, it can be any sort, whatever your form of the divine is. You're just devoting your life. Actually, it's said to be one of the hardest paths. You're kind of devoting every moment to the divine, every action, everything you do, every emotion. You're constantly trying to give everything back or dedicate your life to the divine purpose or whatever that is for you. But often we talk about it as Bhakti Yoga is like singing to the divine, but it's obviously a lot more than that. It is, as I said, it's like a whole life path style, but on a kind of, I guess, a bit superficial way. That's mostly how it's thought of, especially in the modern world. It's like singing, meeting people to sing about the divine. So it could just, your Christian equivalent is going to church, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah.
Okay, and then
the
last one we come to the Kundalini Yoga. So the Kunda is the source of the energy or the divine, which in yoga is being explained that it rests at the root, our base chakra. So the Kundalini Yoga really deals with all the chakras and all the practices around them. That includes lots of postures, singing, chanting, focus practices, and pranayamas. So think of the Kundalini as this aspect of yoga deals with our chakras and the nadi system. But these are the main 9 paths or the systems of yoga. Obviously, in modern time, there are honestly hundreds and hundreds of paths, which
what we've got now is more like styles of yoga. So you have like Bikram, hot yoga, Ashtanga yoga, Kundalini yoga. This is none of that. This is like the old ancient different classifications of yoga. They're kind of like the original paths of yoga, if you like. But now what we have is kind of modern offshoots, I suppose, where usually it tends to be an individual that's taken one small aspect of yoga and have kind of marketed it normally,
created something of their own,
branded it. Which is a lot of the modern, what's out there now. But that's not to say it's not good for you. Most styles of yoga are better than sitting on the sofa and watching TV for hours on end. Whatever. It's just still kind of a bit healthier than doing nothing, isn't it? But these are like the original different classifications. Yeah.
I will stop here. If you have any question or anything you would like to share or add, please do that so.
So does your school or denomination of yoga follow all of these or certain aspects? How
well,
does it pull the
we've got a nice jumper here. It says Sanatan Yoga. So we're following Hatha, Jnana and Raja Yoga. We do touch on all of it really, but our main practices are the Hatha Yoga, so all the different physical practices. Jnana, so the different mental practices of yoga, and then Raja, which kind of means the spiritual path that we're on a path to try and enlighten our soul, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, we tend to say Hatha Jnana Raja, or we can also say like body, mind, spirit, the kind of three main aspects. But we do, you know,
we do work on like
embrace-
all 9 aspects of yoga, even though like all our practices, they are primarily based on the Tantra Yoga. So all the Hatha Yoga practices and pranayama we do, they come from the Tantra. But we tend to like, oh, we used to use the word more often, but we stopped using that as you know, every time you say, oh, we're going to do Tantra Yoga, people have completely different vision. So we don't really use that word anymore, just to keep safe or keep out of it. But yeah, we do cover all these 9 aspects of yoga.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's not to say that the other side of Tantra is not there, because it has been there in ancient times even, but
But it's not we do, yeah.
Yeah, well, our guru said that there's 2 paths of Tantra. One they call the right hand path, which is what we do, and the other is a left hand path, which is associated with like occult practices and the sex stuff. But it's like, yeah, it's not that side is not the spiritual enlightenment path. That's something else. So we're doing like the right hand, what our guru called the right hand path, which is we're only interested in a spiritual what do you say? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so in our tradition, when we talk about the 2 energies, it's in us. So the right side is the male, and then the left side is female. So when they talk about the union of energies, it's in one person. It doesn't need 2 different people to have that union. So all the practice is really to take the energy inwards. And this is where like the Savitri rhythm pranayama we're talking, or you're all going to practice in this module. It's all about enhancing the whole energetic field and really empowering that right and left, the loma viloma, or the male female energies. And that's where the health, well-being, and the balance really begins in our life and our practices.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but just to say I'm really enjoying your expertise and trying to find out more about yoga. I remember when I was in my 20s, my mother, who was in her 40s, said, "Oh, I'm doing yoga." And I thought that was interesting because such an old traditional Catholic who would never question her religion. But I think I understand now that she was probably just doing the physical side and never really went into the depth. So I'm really grateful that you're holding the course, really enjoying about this and understanding deeper, not just the physical movement. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining.
Yeah. Same for us. I'm glad we can keep it going. So I guess just for the next month, obviously if you can join in the live classes that we do, and then in between do the YouTube video. Yeah, there's a bit of homework here, isn't there, that you can have a go at. What have we got? Yeah, you can just, on page 39, practice the Hatha Yoga and Pranayama. And then you could write just a few paragraphs if you like and email them over on your understanding of yoga. And we haven't talked much about stress now, but there's some notes there, just how yoga can release stress.